Colette's Corner.
Hi there, this is Colette from Colette Sewing Machines Plus in Yorkton, and welcome to Colette's Corner. I'd sent out a little thing out on Facebook the other day asking what you would like me to do in these videos, and one answer that I got that everybody really wanted was applique. Okay, one woman had stated she wanted beginner applique. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm just going to go over all of the different things that you use for applique, and then we're going to go over to the machine and I'm going to show you a satin stitch and a blanket stitch. Okay, not every machine has a blanket stitch on it, but every machine will have a satin stitch. So I'm going to show you both versions and how to get your cleanest look with each one of them. Okay, now the first thing that you need when you're appliquing is you need a product that is actually going to stick your applique into position. Okay, so I have two that I really like to use. One of them is Heat and Bond Feather Light. Okay, now you don't want Heat and Bond Heavy, because Heat and Bond Heavy will not let you sew through it. It will gum up your needle. And I get people coming into the store constantly saying, no, I don't like Heat and Bond. But they're using Heat and Bond Heavy. So Heat and Bond Light makes a huge difference with not having your needle gum up or anything. When it's put onto your fabric, it stays nice and soft as well. So you don't have to worry about it getting really stiff, and that's another concern that people have. So you can see that this still drapes without any issue by using the Feather Light. Okay? Now, the only time that I am not a super fan of Heat and Bond is when I am putting it onto batiks. What I find with the batiks, when I put it on, my applique just tends to peel away for some reason. Okay, so I found another product when I was at one of my conferences down in the States that I was walking by this booth, and it was just like it was supposed to happen. What I was having issues with is when I was using my Scan and Cut or your Cricut or any one of those cutting machines, if I were to use Heat and Bond, the paper tended to release before the cut happened. So then the cut got really jagged and it would lift off the mat and everything, and everybody was blaming the actual cutter for doing that, and that the mat was no good and things like that. Well, I found this product and it looks very much like your Heat and Bond, but I don't know if you can tell with the camera. This one almost has like a little scaly looking effect to it, and this one is completely smooth. Okay, so they look a little bit different and they do react a little bit different. When I put this one on the back of my applique, this one here, you can't use really high heat and you can't hold your iron on for too long, or it's just going to seep into your fabric and it's just going to fall off, and then I hear, well, it doesn't work. Well, it does work, but you cannot use a really hot heat on it. Okay, this, on the other hand, this one is called Hot Fix Adhesive Fusible Adhesive is what this one is called. Again, it has your paper on the back, and I have to write it so I can remember it. And this one here has your shining on the other side. This one here, you need to actually apply it with steam. So this one applies, this one you can't use steam, and this one you need to use steam in order for it to seal really well. Okay, so that's basically the differences between those two. Now, if I were to use, I'm just going to take this batik here, and I'm just going to put my fusible onto the back of this batik, and I am just going to very lightly go over it, and that's pretty much all it takes to complete this one. You can see it's shiny there already. Okay, so I'm just going to grab my scissors here, and I'm just going to cut around this, because of course I don't want it to seep out over top of everything when I'm sealing it down. And all you need to do to release the paper is just give it a little scrape with your pin, and you can see that the whole back side of this is shiny. This is what the other side looks like, and this is your shiny side right here. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to place it on top of another batik, and we are going to seal this down. Okay, give it just a tad bit more. Okay. Okay, now this one here is the heat fix. Okay, I attached, I think you should be able to see it on there. I attached this to this one with this, and you can see this one, I can't get it to come off, okay? But with this one, you just do, and you see how easily it comes off, okay? And the more you work with the piece, it starts to release as you're moving things around and that. So I just find this one here, when I put, put it onto the batik, it stays on there the whole time that I am using it. So using this with a cutting machine, it secures to your fabric really well, and the paper doesn't release as easily as it does off of this one. So they all have their place. I love this one, but I also love this one. So it depends on what you're doing as to where you're going to use it, okay? So those are your the way that you apply your heat and bond, and I should show you here as well, okay? You'd want to make sure that that's not on there. You don't know how many times I've left that on there and made an error. So all you're going to do with this is you're going to take whatever design it is that you're going to use. You're going to place your paper over top of it, and I don't think I got it big enough, and then I'm just going to trace around that piece. After I've traced around it, I want to rough cut that piece out. Don't cut it exactly perfect, okay? Then you're going to put it onto the back of your fabric, okay? And then you're going to peel your, and then you're going to close cut it, and then you're going to peel off and you're going to place it where it needs to go. So as you can see here, I've just taken some different shapes so that I can show you how to do curves and inside corners and outside corners when you're actually doing your applique, because there's a little bit of a trick to that as well. So now these are secure in place for me, and you can see they're all piled on top of each other and they're still not stiff. So please don't worry about it making, getting your anything too stiff. So I've done a couple of samples here ahead of time that I wanted to show you. And there's just one more, here it is. When you're doing applique as well, you need what's a stabilizer behind it, especially if you're doing any kind of satin stitching, because satin stitching involves a lot of thread, and if you don't put a stabilizer behind it, it's going to pucker. And it's going to warp, and it's going to stretch, and it's going to do all those things that you absolutely hate, and you're going to say, why does my applique look like this? Okay? So all this product is just a tear away. So when you're done, your piece, this just tears away from it, but it gives you stability to accept all of the thread that you're going to put into that applique versus just leaving it. So I've done a sample here, and I don't know if you can see it on camera, but right here, can you see those puckers in there, and can you see that little bit of warping there and whatnot? That is from not using a stabilizer, okay? So on this one, I didn't use a stabilizer, and you can see there's just that little bit of ripple and everything going around, and it's really hard. I pressed this, and you can see I still couldn't press out those ripples. But you look at the heart that's beside it. Everything is smooth and flat and absolutely no issues, because all I did was placed it behind here and then I stitched and pulled it away. Huge difference in the way your piece is going to turn out. Now, when I do my blanket stitch, because the blanket stitch doesn't have all of this thread, like look at how much thread is in this piece in comparison to this piece. So on this, I don't use a stabilizer, because I don't need to, okay? And these stitches are a little more delicate. So if I went to pull my stabilizer away from these, because they're not dense like this is, these here you have to be much more careful when you're pulling it away, because you can distort your stitching as well, okay? So on this one I don't use, but I do have my heat and bond or my the hot fix one. So I'm using one or the other, so I'm still bonding this down, but I'm not using a stabilizer behind it.
What stitch did you use on each one of those?
This is a blanket stitch and this is a satin stitch, okay? So, and you can see on the back here, I pulled the paper away and you cannot see any paper. The little bit just stays inside the seam as well, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to pop over to the sewing machine, and I am going to show you the do's and don'ts of applique. Okay, so now we're at the machine, and now depending on the machine that you have, this machine actually has a satin stitch built right into it. So if you don't have a satin stitch, you're just going to go and you're going to find your regular old zigzag, okay? And then with that zigzag, you are going to choose whatever width you want. And because I'm doing this on video and I want you to be able to see it, I'm actually going to make it quite wide, just so that you're able to really see what I'm doing here. Normally, excuse me, I wouldn't do it at a width this wide, okay? I usually do it at a little bit narrower of a width. But again, that is personal preference as well. So you do whatever is comfortable for you, okay? So then I would bring this down to probably about a 1.0, okay? Because we want them to be, I'm just going to do it off on the side here just so that you can see what it looks like. And that, and so, okay, I'm going to just speed this up a little bit. Okay, so actually, I am going to even make this shorter, okay, because I want this to be really quite dense. So I'm going to bring it down to a 0.8, and I'm going to do it beside there so that you can see. And then I'm going to bring it down even one more point, one more point, one more point. Okay, and then if you do this, then you can literally look and see, where do I want to go with this? Okay, some people like a little less dense. I like mine to be a little more, so I would do mine more at this heavier end. But again, that's a visual, personal thing that you can pick and choose, okay? I'm going to show you, here's my sample here. Okay, so you can see how dense that is right there. Whoops, sorry. Okay, so that is really coming into the density of what that was at the bottom. Okay, so you, like I say, you pick and choose whatever density that you prefer. And you'll notice I did put that tearaway behind, and I'm just going to show you what happens when you're done. Okay, you just, whoa, it's not cooperating. Okay, you just pull it away like that. Okay, and then all it does is just leaves your stitching behind. Okay, so we're just going to put this back down. And I am now going to change this for myself because I do have an applique stitch built right into my machine. Okay, so this one is 6 wide, and that's way too wide. I don't want it to be that wide. So I am just going to go and I'm going to do that 3.5 just so that you're able to see what it is that I'm doing there. And I'm going to leave the stitch length as it is because this one's already set up for this particular item, okay, this particular design. So what you have to do when you first, oh, let me get that under my foot. First of all, you're going to, if you have an open toe foot, you're going to want to put that foot on, okay, because what is different about this foot and your regular foot? So you get your regular one out here. Okay, there's your regular foot. Okay, it is completely flat on the bottom. Here's your open toe foot. It has a nice wide opening, so it allows you to be able to see really clearly what you're doing. And you'll notice that little indentation on there. What that does is when I'm putting my thread in there, my thread is going to be higher, right? I'm going to exaggerate this. So here's your bump that you'd be going over. If I was going over with this flat foot, it's going to start distorting my stitch because it can't freely flow over top of the height that I'm making. So this one, having that little groove in the bottom, gives you that height, okay? So that's the difference between using an open toe and using this. Now, when I'm doing regular sewing, I don't like to use the open toe because sometimes it'll suck in. Because now I got this groove here. So as I'm sewing, it's not flat anymore. So I don't really like to use regular stitching with this. I only use this for decorative stitching, which is your satin stitching and all of your fancy designs that you have in your machine. Okay? I'm just gonna, oops, get in there. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go around this block. So you need to decide where the swing of your needle is going to be. And if you look right here to the middle of your foot, this is going to swing out that way, okay? If it was sitting on that side of my foot, that means it's going to swing in. So you have to look where the position of your needle is. And I'm just going to bring this down, and I'm actually going to hand crank that. You see how it came in there? And then it went out there. Okay? So I actually like my needle to be on this outside because I want to line that up along the edge of my piece. If you'll notice here, you can see that I'm just falling off the edge of that circle. I don't want it to be inside my fabric, and I don't want it to be way outside my fabric. I want it to fall. Just think of this as a ditch, and you want to stay within that ditch all the way around the piece that you're doing. Okay, so now that I know my needle is swinging in that direction, I know that I need to make sure that I start my piece on this particular machine, that I need to start my piece right about there, because if I pop this down here, then that width is going to fall off of the edge. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you're doing it, because your machine might start out here and go in here. Mine, I have several different machines. I have some that start out here and swing in, and then others swing out. So always pay attention to where that is, because you want to make sure that you're not doing it way on the inside of your fabric and that it's falling to the outside. Now I always do a test before I start. So I'm going to do needle up and needle down. Okay, and you see, if you can get close with the camera there, can you see it from there though? That it fell off right on the edge of that fabric. Okay, and that's what our goal is for it to fall there. Now I'm off to the side of the machine here, so I'm going to do the best that I can to keep my piece going completely straight, because I want you guys to be able to see. So if I fall off that outside edge, don't panic and say I don't know how to do it, because I do, but I'm just off to the side. So I want you to be able to see, and it's kind of hard for me to see from this direction. So what we're going to do is, our goal is to come here, and then when we turn this corner, our goal is to turn that corner like that, so that that corner is nice and clean. So I'm going to be going down zigzag, zigzag, zigzag. Okay, I want this to stop so that when I turn the corner, it's going to zigzag, zigzag, zigzag. Okay, so it's literally going to sit across what I call the ditch right on the top there. And when we get close to there, I'll show you what I mean. And I do a lot of counting, okay, because it was like 1, 2, 3. 1, so that I know where it's landing, whatever particular stitch I'm using. When I'm using a blanket stitch, there's several different movements in the blanket stitch, so I need to keep track of those movements, so when I'm coming to the corner, it can turn right. So we're just going to go along here and just let the machine pretty much do the work for you. Oh, I'm falling off the edge, guys. There we go. Okay, I'm back on again. I guess I could have started closer to the corner. That's another thing. Never start on a corner. Always start somewhere up from the corner, because you do not want to have to overlap in your corner. You can overlap in the middle, but you don't want to do that in the corner. So we're just going to keep going here. Okay, we're getting close here, so I'm going to... Okay, so my swing is in, and then I'm going to use my needle up and down so that I can keep track of where my swing is going. Okay, now my swing is out, so now my swing is going to go in. Okay, so I still have a little bit of fabric showing there, so I'm going to do this one more time. Okay, so now my swing is on the outside edge, so that when I turn this corner, okay, and I'm just going to do this slowly so you can see. You see how my swing went in, and now my swing has come out. So I have literally used that top corner to be able to turn. So now I can continue to go. And we won't go too far. I just want you to see that corner there, because then you're going to do that same thing at the other corner. So we're going to stop here. And you see what a beautiful corner that did. Okay, so you need to watch where that swing is, because that swing's got to come back in and then go out so that it can continue to go in and out. And then you just go all the way around, and you just, this is where I went wobbly. So, and then all you're going to do is I go over about 3 or 4 stitches, and then you can tie it off at the back if you choose to, but usually as it goes over top of each other, you know, I don't normally do that, but if you choose to do that, you can. So you would just go all the way around that corner, and this is what you get. Okay, so that's doing corners. Okay, so now let's grab a circle. Okay, your circle is going to, and this is kind of a large circle here. So your movement on a tight circle, you do very small movements. On a larger circle, you can kind of, you know, give yourself, I just kind of contort myself and then let the machine, you know. So again, you're going to let the machine do the work, but you're just going to help it along like this, okay? And I'm going to show you what would happen. The way your needle swings is when you need to turn a tight corner, why you get that gap. Because so often when you turn a corner, you get that spacing because you're turning the corner and the wrong swing of the needle. Okay, so we're going to start here, and I can see that my needle was on the outside edge, so I'm just going to line it up so that it's on the outside edge, and then it is going to swing in. Okay, so you can see here, because this is a larger circle, I can really just guide most of it just by literally turning the corner with my hand. Okay. But let's say we've come, and this is a smaller circle, and we've come to an area that we're already starting to go too straight. It's not actually turning the corner. So what I want you to do here is I'm going to show you the right and the wrong, okay? So right now, if I needed to move this, I want to move it just like a minute. I don't want to move it a huge amount of space, okay, at one time, okay? So what I need to do is I need to make sure that my needle is swinging in the right direction. Now I'm going to do this so that it's really noticeable when you're doing it wrong, okay? So if I were to turn this right now and I were to turn it with my needle on the inside swing, I'm going to show you what's going to happen. Okay, I'll actually make it more drastic, whoops, so that you can really, really see it, okay? Just going to hit my scissors here so that you can see. Okay. Oh, you can't. I'm going to get, do you want to pass me that teeny tiny circle that I had cut? Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to satin stitch around this circle. And when you're doing a tight area, you need to start and stop quite a few times so that you can give it just a little bit of a turn at a time. If you give it too big of a turn, you're going to have a gap like this. So you want to make sure that you don't get that gap in there. So my swing of my needle is to the outside because it's catching the edge of the fabric. And then I am going to let the swing go to the inside. Okay. Okay, so right now here, if I were to turn my piece when my needle's landing to the inside, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to turn my piece, and you're going to see what happens there when I do that, okay? And then I'm just going to go on a little ways, and then I'm going to show you what happens when you do that, okay? Can you see that space right in between there? Okay? These are all nice and smooth, and then you can actually see the peach peeking through. Well, you don't want a whole bunch of those all the way around that circle. So you need to stop with the swing on the outside, swinging to the middle is what you need to do. So right now my swing is right here. It's going to go to the outside edge, okay? Keep forgetting. Okay, and then as we're going around, so now I need to turn, but I do not want my needle there. I want to go needle up, needle down, and I want my turn to go this way, because now I'm covering what was on the inside, okay, not leaving a gap on the outside, okay? So now when this swings in, I'll try to do it so that you can see the swing. Okay, you see how it landed exactly in that same hole again? So now I don't have that, I'll go a little ways here and then I'll take it off for you. And you know, I don't have a stabilizer underneath, so you can see how the fabric's puckering. Okay, okay, so by doing it that way, you've stayed in. You don't have that space there. So just keep in mind, every time that I'm going to turn it a minute, my swing's got to be on the outside edge, because this is an outside circle that we're doing. When I do my inside circle, it needs to be the opposite. It needs to land on the inside and then go to the outside. So at this point in time, whenever you do a turn, it's got to be with your needle on the outside. Okay, so that's how you do a circle. And I've got one completely done here so that you can see how smooth, how smooth it all goes. There's no jiggies and jaggies or anything. It just goes smooth all the way around. There's no gaps, there's no holes, there's nothing, because I turned when my needle was on the outside edge. And if there's anything, it's overlapping on the inside, so you don't notice that. So it keeps it really nice and smooth. Okay, so that's a circle. Okay, so now we're going to do inside curve, okay? And you'll notice that my needle is landing to the inside of my foot, so I know that I need to have my swing is going this way and then that way. So I'm just going to do that, and I can pretty much just eyeball that distance that it's going to swing over, and you just kind of get used to that after a while. So just because I said that, it will not line up. That's just Murphy's Law, right? So I'm just going to do needle up and then needle down just to see, and you see it landed right on the outside edge of that, and that's what our goal is. So when you're doing an inside curve, when it's tighter, you have to do way more stops and starts, okay? This one doesn't have a really tight curve, so I'm not going to have to start and stop quite as often. So I'm just going to, and I'm going to really exaggerate this so that you guys can see what can happen if you're not paying attention. Okay, you see how it started going, because I was trying to force it to come around the curve and I fell off the edge, and it just doesn't come out really nice and smooth. So what you want to have happen is you want to be able to have, I'm just going to make sure it's landing okay. So again, when you're doing an inside curve, you want to stop on the inside so that your outside isn't spread. So I'm going to, in order to make this go really nicely with the curve, I'm trying to get this out of the way. Now, right now, if I were to turn, because I needed to curve around that corner, because now I'm going this way, right? What's going to happen? I have spread that out now, so it's going to actually leave a space. So I'm just going to go needle up, needle down, and hopefully you'll be able to see this when I take it off. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to make sure that my needle now stops on the inside curve in order for me to turn, because it only makes sense. You see, when I turn that needle now is going to swing over and it's going to cover the thread that I've already had there. So if I do this, then I'm not going to have that gap there that you would get otherwise. Okay, can you see that gap right there? Because I was on the outside of my piece and I turned my fabric, so it's going to make a gape. So when I'm on, what I have to do is be on the inside in order to turn, because then it's going to come up and it's just going to cover the thread that you had prior. Okay, so outside circle, stop on the outside, do your little turn. Inside circle, stop on the inside and do your little turn. So just do, when you think outside, you turn outside, your needle's on the outside. When you turn inside, the needle's on the inside. Okay, so that's how you do an inside corner. Okay, so now we're going to do a heart. Okay, so our corner is a little tighter in the heart, and then we have this little piece in the center of our heart that we now need to deal with as well. So we want to do basically like we did with our outside corner. You just need to know where to stop, and then you will actually, this here went over top of the piece that I did there. Okay, So this is a little more difficult to do because you have to know exactly where you need to stop. So it's going to, you got to think a little harder, because what you'll have to do when you come around this corner is you're going to have to come down a little ways. So you're going to have to kind of judge, where would that be, that if I turned the corner, is it going to be, you know, too close off to the side here? You want to make it as much in the middle as you possibly can. And again, if you don't get it perfect, if someone looks that close, they shouldn't be looking. Okay, so again, my needle is on the outside, so I'm just going to make sure it's landing where it needs to be. Now this corner here is a little tighter, so I'm going to have to stop more often to get it to nicely turn around the corner. I'm just going to slow the speed down here just a little bit. Okay. Sometimes if I'm really paying attention, I can get myself around this corner. Okay, so I want to try to see, and you see how I'm just turning my hand as I go, and then you're going to get to a point where you can't turn your hand anymore, and you're going to stop. Okay, now if I left my swing to the inside like that, I'm going to have a hole. So I'm going to make sure that my needle is landing on the outside. So now I can do my little minute turn, because that's all I really need. It's just that very slight little turn. I'll put it back where it was, and I'll just show you. You don't even have to lift that high. You see how I just barely moved it? That's enough to start letting me get going on a nice even keel again, going around the corner. Okay, so, and then when I come to this middle here, I'm going to have to pay attention. What you might want to do here as well is, if you even put yourself kind of a little dot there or something, it kind of tells you where you need to go then, because you pretty much need to go just past that little indentation in your heart there. So let's see what happens here. I fell off the edge there, but okay, so now we're coming here, and we want to make sure just a little ways, okay? And if I left my needle there, what's going to happen? When I turn it like this to go up, it's going to swing the wrong way, right? Okay, so because I want it to swing up on this side. So now what I need to do is make my needle go up and down again so that I've got my swing on that side. Then I can turn this, and you can see that's basically the distance that I went down is basically the width of what this satin stitch is. So we're going to start again, okay, and then it's just going to bring us up and around the corner. Okay. And then you would just continue all the way around your heart like you would on anything else. Okay, and there you go. There's your inside. Okay, so that's how you deal with the inside. And I could have stayed back just one, I could have stayed back just one stitch yet. You see how it went over there just a tad? So I would have stopped one stitch sooner, and then that wouldn't have happened. Okay, so just pay attention to how your needle is going up and down, and that will really help you out a lot. Okay, so now we're going to go on, and we're going to do our blanket stitch. So now I'm going to go in, and I am going to find the blanket stitch in my machine, and I believe it's under this one. Just let me have a peek here. Nope, so it must be under this. There we go. There it is right there. Okay, so now I'm going to use that blanket stitch. Now it's on a 3.5 width, which I'm going to leave the width, but I'm going to lengthen the stitch just a little bit, okay? And then that will give us a little more, I don't like mine to be really, really close together. It depends on how big the item is that you're doing. If the circle is smaller, you want them closer together. But if your area is larger, you can have it further apart, okay? So I am just going to set that one there just so that you can really see what's happening here. Again, you do not want to start at the corner. You always want to start in the middle, or, you know, just a ways away from your corner. Okay, now again, you can see that the swing of my needle is on the outside, and if you look at the picture on the screen, that means that it's going to sew here, and then it's going to come in, and then it's going to go out. Okay, so with a blanket stitch, you're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and some blanket stitch are triples and doubles and all that kind of stuff. So it just depends on what blanket stitch you have on your machine. It could just go 1, 2, 3, 4, or it can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so it just depends on how heavy that blanket stitch is going to be. I don't want mine to be heavy, so I picked this one that I have here. Okay, so I'm just going to bring my foot down, and what's going to happen, because I can see the swing of my needle is there and there's a lot of space here, we know it's going to swing to the middle. So I'm just going to go ahead and, okay, you see it went back and forth, back and forth. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there's actually 5 motions that thing does. So as I come to the end here, I'm going to start counting so that I know exactly what I need, when I need to stop at this corner. So that was already 1. I'm going to do this just for 1 stitch at a time so you can see. So that was 2. That's 3. Now the swing over is 4. Swing back is 5. Okay, and then we're going to go again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so right now I'm not close enough to the edge of my fabric to be able to turn that corner. So I do what's called cheating. Okay, so I'm going to lift my needle up, and I am going to, oh, it might actually just land where I want. No, see how it landed? Too far out. Okay, so I'm just going to bring my needle up, and I am just going to cheat, and I am going to place it where I want it to land. Okay, so of course it didn't cooperate for me there, but you're going to see when I turn the corner here, because I'm talking, I lost track of where I was in my stitches, but I believe it's going to swing over. So I'm just going to go needle up. See, now it filled in that area just like it did when we did the satin stitch, and then it's going to come down here, and this is where I'm just going to cheat a little bit because I wanted to cheat earlier, and I'm just going to bring it in just a hair so that now it stays on that edge. And then I'm going to again come out. Now if I was in front of the machine, I would have caught that sooner. Okay, so I'm going to show you that corner. I'm going to show you what I did wrong, and then you just pay attention when you're going around the corner so that you see how it fell off the corner there a little bit. And if you see this one here that I did, it passed exactly, you know, on top of those corners. Okay, so it's all just paying attention. Actually, it turned out not too bad. It's much better than I thought it was, but you can see there's that little space in between, and I would have wanted it to land so that it, you know, came right around the corner there. So again, you would just go all the way around your corner, and then you would cross over those two right at the very end, and then tie it off to the back if you choose to. Okay, so that's how you use a blanket stitch. There's a little more thinking and whatever when you're using your blanket stitch in comparison to your satin stitch, because you got to keep up with what is happening. And like I say, each blanket stitch is a little bit different, so you need to test it out first and see how many swings your needle is going to make, so that when you turn those corners, you turn it so that it swings back over in that ditch, and then you continue to go. Okay, it's the same thing with your heart here like we had done. I went around my corner there, and then you see how that one landed right in the very center of that corner, and then I pivoted and I turned and I went all the way around. Okay, and then you'll see down in the point there it did the same thing. So every shape is going to be a little bit different. So you just need to pay attention, to how you're going. And again, when you're turning the corners, you need to make sure you watch where the swing of your needle is. So, and then it's just a tiny little movement each time and lift your foot, and then that keeps you right close to the edge, and it gives you a nice smooth circle. Okay, so that is how I applique. So thank you so much for joining me today again on Colette's Corner. Please look at my social media and subscribe, like, and I will see you again. Happy sewing.